Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new The National Blast podcast with Keenan Skelly. Join Keenan and guests as they blast you to a place that is certainly not boring, yet still giving you highlights from areas in cyber where key policies and legislation are needed, exist, but aren't enforced, or no one is even talking about it. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hey everybody, it's Keenan Skelly, and you are listening to the latest episode of the National Blast, and I have some very exciting shit to talk about today. I'm talking with Ian, and I'm going to let Ian tell all of the things about himself right now. Tell me, Ian.
Okay. Ian Bramson. I'm the global head of cybersecurity for ABS Group. It's a long-winded way of just saying we deal with OT cyber. We're out there right now trying to not only solve right in the front line with
Describe the front line to the listeners, because when we say the front line of anything with cyber, people are like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Right now, the front line, what we're talking about with that is in the actual systems of OT, meaning what if you're actually with critical infrastructure and you go into the actual machines, equipment, everything that makes things go. Bad guys are in there, they're trying to blow things up and trying to shut things down. Or
we got Stuxnet out there happening. We got Colonial Pipeline out there happening. Things that affect everyday people.
Yeah, and that risk is going up. And we're trying to get ahead of it. In fact, we're trying to get the whole industry to get ahead of it. But right now, that's a hard fight.
Why is that? Why is it so hard? You know, all of my listeners know my background already and how much I love critical infrastructure and how much we talk about it here. And one of the complaints that I have is we've been talking about this for a long time. But right now, specifically Congress, the president, people have their eyes focused on it because we've had much more evidence of attacks over the last 6 months to a year than we have in the past. But I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's just going to get worse, right?
Yeah, so the risk is getting more. So everything's getting more connected, right? When you're in there in operations, when you're talking about the machines and the equipment, first of all, a lot of that stuff was never meant to be connected. So now we're connecting a bunch of junk that no one ever thought would be, so they didn't think to protect it. Secondly, is they're just rushing to get connected more because they're trying to do digitalization, they're trying to do automation, they're trying to do remote control. All that's for market. They want to get ahead of the market. They want to reduce costs. They want to be able to operate faster, more lean, etc. But no one's thinking about the cyber side. They're rushing out there to say they have a competitive advantage. But in the OT, in industrial cybersecurity, they're not paying attention as much to that. So you can see the risk is going up. Things are getting more connected, more open. But if you're not really doing the basics, and we're not even talking about things that are that sophisticated, we're talking about know your assets.
Yeah. When I think back to the old school days, owners and operators might have a sysadmin, maybe.
Yeah.
They might have an IT guy, maybe. Right. But when it comes to security, if you can't put that on your P&L and say at the bottom line, I can really afford to do this, then you're not going to do it.
Well, that's a lot of times what I get asked. I get everything from right now because of things are getting more. There are a lot more attacks happening because the government's paying more attention, because there's more exposure. Podcasts like this talking about it. You start getting now a little bit more of a range. So it used to be really hard to talk about it. Now you'll have some customers and some people who say, yeah, we need to do something. I just don't know what.
I just have no idea where to start.
I don't know where to begin. And then other ones who are still telling me they think I make up cyber to sell them stuff. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to come back and talk to you.
You're screwed, man.
Yeah, I can't,
You're so screwed.
I can't help you with that as we go. So yeah, where to begin is that. And usually they get overwhelmed because there's a lot of technical speak. And ours is like, no. Start with the basics. Do you know what you need to protect? We call that asset management, asset inventory. Do you know what holes you have?
Let's back up even before that. Do you know why you need to protect that asset, right?
True.
I found this like over the last 15 years, owners and operators are super smart about what makes the money and where the money is coming from, but they're not always super smart about why the money is coming from that thing. And I think that's part of that initial, this is why you're important. This is what you're affecting, whether you think you are or not. And then why should you protect it?
And I think that's part of the challenge. And I think actually the power of when you talk about industrial cyber. What do you mean? IT side, usually they think, okay, that's people stealing data. They're just doing stuff on my enterprise side. So usually those budgets are shrinking. The voice is pretty small. But when you get into the industrial side, the ones who truly understand it, they're like, holy crap, this is affecting my operations. This is my life's blood. If I'm a pipeline company and I can't move oil, or if I'm a power company,
a water treatment company, and
I can't do that, or someone's trying to poison that, or they're trying to get something into that.
It's kind of a big deal.
It's a big damn deal. It's the core of their identity. It's the core of their revenue.
Yep.
So when they get it, now they're saying, okay, how do I protect this? Because you're talking now about operational risk, but you're also talking about safety. Yep. So you're talking.
You know what? I'm going to stop you right there because you just said something that's profound, and I've preached this a lot on this podcast. A lot of people outside of America think that security is safety. They're one and the same. They're exactly the same thing. And that's because they've lived different lives than we have. We're still young in America. We haven't lived through world wars where privacy and data weren't going to get you killed or put on a list, right? So that right there is something that Americans are really just coming to terms with. Like, we have this information and we have this power and we have this water treatment plant. We have this nuclear power plant. It's not just about security. It's about safety, general safety.
Because things are what we call cyber physical. I mean, they can do junk in the real world. They can overheat a valve. They can overheat a system. They can change a valve. They can change a setting. They can make something. They can, if it's maritime,
they can destroy a cooling tower.
You can steer ships into another ship. You can do a lot of stuff, okay, here that they usually only see in some of the sci-fi movies. I'm like, no, you're getting into that realm now, because in OT cyber, what we always say is when you're at beginning of OT cyber and you're just entering into that network, they look like computers. But the deeper you go into that network, the more less things look like computers, and more things look like pieces of equipment, devices, valves. And so as you go deeper, you start getting into more realistic things, devices and equipment that you use and cranes and all that. That's what they're trying to get at.
And the things that you don't really think are important, that generally you would say, oh, well, it's not a big deal, right? It's a crane, or it's not a big deal. It's just, the O2 system that runs the AC and, lets everybody breathe inside the building. It's not that important though, right?
No, these aren't that important. So, and that's what you have to get. And what is that risk to that? And when you said safety, you can do site safety, what's happening, or a vessel if it's on a ship or if it's in a power plant. But it's also environmental safety. It's public safety. So it's a safety Yahtzee. Oh, yeah. Taking all up and down.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. He said Yahtzee, y'all. He just said Yahtzee. Okay, I'm from Chicago, and Yahtzee is like an every night thing. And I can't think of the last 20 years of my life ever hearing somebody refer to anything in technology as Yahtzee. So you get a high five.
There you go.
And you get
cheers.
a cheers. Yes, it's RSA. We're having a drink. Okay, go ahead.
So what's going to change? Like, what's going to make this change? We were talking a little bit before even we started the podcast, so what's going to happen with that? And we've been talking about it for a while. What's either changing now to get it more focused, and where's it going to make real change? Mm-hmm. So what's happening now? Take that. Well, you mentioned a little bit. More attacks have been happening. More focus is on critical infrastructure. Why? Because bad guys are starting to learn that they can do bad stuff in these systems. They realize that when you talk about, say, Colonial Pipeline, I know that was an IT attack, but it had OT consequences. You shut down a pipeline for a week. Mm-hmm. And, that was a warning bell to people like you and me. That was a dinner bell for the bad guys.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, oh, wait, hold on a second.
There's a lot of stuff out here.
I can do stuff. Hold on. And so you start seeing other attacks happen. And then you start seeing other exposures like Log4j and others that had, again, IT, and then also there's OT. Then you have pipe dream. And they're like, okay, now that's specific to OT. Why? Because bad guys are starting to learn it. And then you have a conflict like you have in the Ukraine. And what you have is an accelerant. Because in those conflicts, guess what gets moved faster? Weaponization of stuff. Weaponization of cybersecurity and infrastructure is there. There were attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure before boots ever hit the ground.
I was just going to say that's everybody thinks that this is new. Like the public thinks this is something that's new. This never happened. But oh my gosh, it's been happening for 20 years.
But now you get this conflict. They're going to be able to try new stuff.
Yes. And now they also have the power of media, the power of the internet, the power of, hey, we did this and we want to take credit for it. There are other things that are in play now that weren't 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
And even more than that, I think, yes. So building on that is, we call this the Ukrainian conflict. It said this is now a multiplayer game. It's not two nations going at it. All of a sudden you had Anonymous declaring war on the Russian government. And then
you have Conti, who's like, we don't know who we are as an organization.
And then you had retaliations against the U.S. for it's all of a sudden it's everyone on everyone. You have false flag stuff going on. You get everything jumping in because there's a conflict, which then expedites the risk. Because they're going to get better at it. So why has it moved the last time? It's because it's starting to hit it. I say starting. It hasn't hit it. I don't know what it's going to take, but there's going to be.
I think we're going to see it the next 6 months, though.
It's going to be
pertains to Russia and Ukraine.
There's going to be. There's just. It's getting.
Please don't say Cyber 9/11. I will punch you right now.
No, I'm not saying anything on it because I don't want to put it out there in the universe. And what I'm saying is, but there is these convergence. But then you have government coming in and saying, okay, we need to take this more seriously, and they are. And CIS has done some great jobs for getting information out. There's executive orders, there's regulatory environments, as you well know. And then you have digitalization coming in, things getting more connected. You have the bad guys doing more having more attacks, but more sophisticated, they're learning that arena. And then you have the government coming in. At some point, that all hits a tipping point. All those convergences hit something. And that's why you're seeing an uptake on stuff, but that's not what's going to get the good guys doing good stuff.
Here we go. I feel like there's about to be a bomb drop.
Well, it's just what I'm looking at it going, everyone says, okay, the United States government should come in and save the day and give us a bunch of regulatory environments. Some people say, of course, other people say, no regulation. But I'm saying, if you're asking that, you might be asking the wrong question. Okay. Because compliance can do some stuff. I've seen it. There are people who want to justify budgets that actually spend on it. And if there's a regulation, that frees them up to go do this. So they can actually make the case. It gets some others who weren't paying attention to anything to start doing something. But you cannot regulate your way to security. You can regulate your way to compliance. And there's a huge difference between
so glad you said that. There's a massive difference. And when it comes to most of the companies in the United States, if we're talking about US government, right? If you say compliance, they're like, oh, well, shit, I got to do this. If you say regulation, they're like, why? Why do I have to do that?
And
that's a cultural United States thing.
But I would say, again, government can play a lot of roles. And again, some of the compliance tip, but compliance, first of all, is a least common denominator concept to begin with. It has to, by definition, apply to the broadest amount of people so that it makes the least amount what you do. Secondly, it's binary. Do you do this? Do you not? Not how well you should, not what your threat environment, your maturity assessment. It's just simply yes, no.
Yeah.
Oh, training for people? Oh, you sent out
you sent an email out.
Yeah, once a year. And they're like, that's it. Check, right? It doesn't do anything that's more substantial that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But nor should it, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that what's happening in there, what's happening here, the digital front lines of what we said is actually in the systems and in the operations and in the networks of critical infrastructure. Therefore, the people who run the critical infrastructure need to get serious about what's going on. If they live in market, then I believe it is those market drivers that's going to actually get in there. So let me give you an example.
Oh man, I got so many comments already. I'm going to stop you before you give an example. So yes to market drivers, yes to all of that. But how many operators, like cyber operators at nuclear power plants or water treatment plants, do you know who are like, oh man, I got to do this with people?
They do it what? For the
They're
people?
going to do this for the people. Like, they have a job.
No, they
don't
have
care
a
about
job and they have this job to do, but their organizations or companies, especially the ones that are private sector ones, need to understand that if you can't, let's say, bid on something because you have a cyber rating. Let's just say you had a Moody's rating, if you will, or a credit score, if you will.
But isn't that what cyber insurance is for?
No, cyber insurance has got its own set of issues. Cyber insurance can't right now underwrite cybersecurity because there's no information, there's no historical
There's
data.
no historical
I
data.
sat and talked with them about you need predictive analytics. In order to have predictive analytics, you need data. In order to need data, you need to be doing something. There's a loop there that you have to figure out. You got to break that.
Yep.
Okay. And we're working with them to try to get that done. But that's a different jam altogether. No, you don't have a rating. There isn't a thing out there. There isn't a thing that says if you went below your AAA cybersecurity rating, we're going to bring down your valuation of your stock. Because if you did, I promise you,
everybody would care.
Okay?
Yeah,
I've been in the room with the cyber folks that have been largely ignored. And up until a point where that company could not bid on a project because they could not provide strong enough evidence of their cyber.
And this is not new in the world of government contracting or any kind of business.
But they don't really.
For example, if you violate the rules of sharing nuclear weapons information with other countries, you don't get to play with the government anymore.
Right. But but it's not strictly enforced on that side. What I'm saying is when this situation happened and they could not bid, the head of operations and the head of sales ran into the room, banged on the table and said, "We need better cyber." I'm like, oh. And at that point I was like, oh, we affect your top line. So you can't bid on stuff and you're going to care. You're going to have problems with potential insurance, then you might care. You're going to have problem with your stock prices or your valuation, then you're going to care. So the question
but
then
is the disconnect between government and business always is that business is looking at the bottom line and government is looking at something bigger. The question, and I would say the harder question here is what is, everybody says public-private partnerships, right? We've been saying that since NPPD started, since DHS started. It's hard. And it's specifically hard when you come in as the government, you say, I'm going to regulate you and I'm going to make rules for you, but I'm not going to give you any carrots for doing right things.
And I'm saying this because you know one lever, which is regulatory environment. Mm-hmm. Not that you don't do some of that just to baseline everything. I got, of course. But the rest of that is the government could, or organizations could, in these partnerships or whatever you want to call them, is start injecting this into those market drivers. If you start promoting that, maybe the government is the one who sets up this Moody's rating, but it gets it adopted by the analysts. It gets it adopted, and associations and everyone, and have that enforced. But it's a maturity model now, and it's a benchmark maturity model. It's not a yes, no, it's how well you do, what's your target state, what's your particular environment. But when you start doing it on this kind of level, whether it be the government doing it or other forcing factors, but if you get it into this, let me put it this way. If I'm a company and I have a regulation, I will do the least amount to meet the regulation. Of
course.
But if I'm a company and I have to beat out a competitor on a bid,
I will do everything. I will throw billions of dollars into that project.
You've got to get it into that energy, right? You're not talking about the good for everyone. You're not talking about altruism. You're talking about, this is about, you get it into the mainstream of market drivers. This will have its own sustainable.
No shit. Truth. You cannot do business with the U.S. government unless these are the things.
These are things. Boom. Or get it into any supply chain. Everyone make that mandate for the link before.
Yep.
I want it because I'm inheriting your risk. When I do business with you and you're doing something, then I inherit yours and you inherit the other. Yep. So if you just everyone turn to the left and to the organizations that supply them, I'm looking at you and I'm going to start making this part of my RFPs. Why? Because it's better for me to protect myself, because attacks through the supply chain and there's attacks on the supply chain.
Oh, let's not even get into the supply chain. Like SBOM is a whole other talk that we should have. Actually, we should have. You should definitely come back because we've already had like 15 different topics.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
insurance.
I'm like,
there's a lot.
Like, to all of them.
Because it's all happening at once. They're creating off each other, right? So all these things happen because if you're in critical infrastructure, by and large, you're part of some sort of supply chain. Yep. Okay. And in that, as part of supply chain, you do need to look at the stuff that happens, as I said before. if this is going to take off, have to get into that private sector, because that's where the problem is. That's where the driver is. That's where everything is happening. You can't just come from the outside and pull one.
No,
and that's
you can't come in as the government and say, you must do this.
Correct. If you can start promoting it and let them take it self, and
let them help build it
and put it into their competitive stuff.
Yeah. Have
them understand that if you're at the end of the supply chain and you're consuming it, you can set those standards.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Those other people will, if you say, listen, this is one of the critical criteria, we're just going to evaluate, not if you're doing it, but if you're doing it better than your competitor. Because we want the safest environment.
We can tell you if you are.
And we can tell you if you are. And if you need something else, then you'll start getting these kinds of ratings, and then that will standardize. Yeah. The government can help facilitate that. The government can help promote that.
It can, but the government is not comfortable with that. The government is just now coming into a space. Leaders like Jen, leaders like others are coming in saying, okay, no, let's stop. Let's just stop for a second and look at why we're doing the things we're doing. And that's great. But effectively, how long does that change take? Right? That's what worries me when we talk about ideology like this. And I believe I'm 100% with you.
But the question is then, how do you expedite, right? Without having a major, obviously it's major.
Expedited by letting everyday people know that they can reach out to their congressman at any time to let them know that if they believe in some legislation, they can reach out to the people who are chairing that legislation and actually help guide it to be the right thing for their communities. That's super important.
There you go. But I think we're in an inflection point. We're at a point of change where things are starting to get really interesting in all the ways you could say it, right? I don't want to see it as we're going to learn a lesson. We're going to get there.
One way or the other.
How do you want to learn that lesson?
Right.
I'm really trying this not to learn the hard way. Yeah. Right. Let's get out there and get folks actually in these areas. If they don't know what to do, there's ways you can figure out how to do this. Do this. This in this environment isn't that. We're not talking about on the IT side. You get very advanced techniques. You get very advanced technology.
But this isn't rocket science. This is very prescribed science that we have had for 50 years, for 75 years, and we know what it is.
And the industrial environment's way different, right? And that's another mistake we see. What I see also things is that some of the basic stuff that can start is you can have your boards asking the right questions. There's confusion. So we're seeing cybersecurity as a top 3, top 2 priority on boards. But when you get beyond that, you get a lot of confusion. So what is cybersecurity? So they'll see an attack like Colonial Pipeline says, are we safe on that? Are we safe from this? Well, just asking that question is a weird.
I was going to say, who are they asking that question to? Because the operators at the low level are going to say, no, we're not. We need this much money. The CISO is going to say, if they have a CISO, he's going to say, I mean, we can be good for a couple months. Right?
Well, this is exactly the point. What they'll do is they'll give you the IT answer. Yes, we can protect against a ransomware. We're doing all these great things against them. What they didn't answer was on their OT side, they're doing jack waddle because they don't know it, and it's a black box, and they don't even know where to begin. Yeah. So the boards didn't know. All they heard was, "Yep, we're good," but you're using IT to shield the OT issues because the board doesn't know to ask the right questions. So
they don't even know the difference between OT and IT.
Correct. So I spent a lot of time educating boards, going, there is actually a difference. And you should be asking this question about
your OT. Here's why it matters to your bottom line.
And this is why it matters, because of everything else, it is your bottom line. It is the way you produce anything. It is the actual identity of your company. It is what you do. It's your reason for being as an organization. So you might want to pay attention to that a little more. Ask the question this way. What are we doing in our OT? Do we know what we need to protect? And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, people have no idea even what they should be protecting. They don't know. If you don't know the answer to the first question,
you're screwed, man.
How do you know the rest of it? Right.
You're screwed.
How do you know for the rest
and
of it?
And this is part of my challenge, having been government and private sector, is, we talk about carrots and sticks and regulations and compliance and all of these things, but what is that magic middle line, right? What is that space where we're comfortable enough that owners and operators are willing to share information with the government, and the government is willing to say, okay, we're not going to smack you on this because you came to us and we're working together and everything's magical. where's that space? What is that fine line? What is that critical tipping point where everybody gets it?
Well, there's no magic line, I don't think. Okay. I don't think there's one.
That's a bummer.
That is. And if it was a formula and it was easy, we would have crossed that line. Look, I'm even all my customers, different ones, at different spaces, different reasons for doing it. One is because they've been suffering attacks and they're scared. Okay. Well, fear is a good motivator, unfortunately.
It's not the best, but it's a good one.
It'll work. And you don't want to keep doing that. Others are looking at it going, well, this is part of our brand. We're the latest digital badasses that are out there. I guess we better live up to this. Mm-hmm. We're the most automated, whatever. Others have some key board members that are looking. Others are looking at that regulatory environment and realize that that's not going to lighten. That's going to go more. I got to stay ahead of that.
But a lot of smaller and medium-sized owners and operators have nowhere to begin. They have nowhere to even start.
Yeah, you need solutions right sized for that.
Yes.
That says, look, we're going to also help you. It's no longer, this is a business imperative. Okay, it's no longer if you should just own its house. So let's talk about that.
And I think that's where the ruling that's going to come out from DHS on how they're going to implement the 72 hours, I think that's absolutely critical. And it's going to either kill that's
causing a lot of stress
grow
on how do we do it? Because people, again, spirit and letter.
Yeah.
Am I trying to do that so I can just meet that and check the box and move on?
Or are you actually trying to?
Are you actually trying to do something behind the spirit of that? And I think that's where, when you talk about where the light comes on, if you're looking at the regulatory environments or any of this stuff, and you're talking about, okay, what's the least I can do to get this? Your light's probably not.
Not even a little.
If you're looking at this going, this security stuff's important. This is my operations. This is my life's blood. So where do I begin?
But just like in IT and the rest of the tech world and the rest of the business world, you often don't realize that until after chaos has happened.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Cyber 9/11, but if I were going to say Cyber 9/11, it would be Cyber 9/11, right? For individual organizations and individual sectors. Mm-hmm. Once you have that breach, then you really understand, after you pay out the insurance and you pay out the ransomware and you pay out for all the customers, and then the customers sue you because they didn't have electricity or they didn't have gas. Then you understand what that really is in your bottom line. And maybe, just maybe, I'm thinking crazy here, maybe that's the lesson that we teach to those executives and board members is this is what it actually looks like. This is the cost of not doing what you do.
So we talked to that. They asked me, so what's the ROI? Get that asked a lot. I'm like, well, when you look at this, and you're asking me for an ROI on your cyber, I can tell you what happens. It's $1 million a day if you shut down. It's this or that. Okay, loss of lives. You got your suits, the Yahtzee of the risks, and all that kind of stuff. I can talk about all that. But I said, at the end of the day, you're asking me to prove a negative. What's the value of something not happening? And that is freaking hard to actually prove. So why don't you look at this as a risk? You have risk all the time. Risk a hurricane.
Your entire job is to determine what is risk to your business. It should not be hard for you.
This is a risk equation. In fact, we've actually mapped that out. If we do it, we say here. I do. So here's a point of attack. You just got attacked, right? We say okay.
Okay. Also, so right now he's actually using chocolates and stickers to make like a diagram, and I just want to point out that our listeners have no idea what you're doing. But
I will describe it. You have a point of attack. And everything you do before the point of training, all the assessment, all the asset management, hardening, blah, blah, blah stuff that you do before that reduces the likelihood of a successful attack. Likelihood of attack, 100%. We're not saying that. We can go ahead, take this bow tie risk matrix and tweak it. Everything that happens after that point of attack. Okay, right of Lindor.
Right of Lindor. Nobody cares about right of Lindor. It's all about left of Lindor.
We're just using a Lindor chart as the point.
Oh, so yeah,
the stuff on the right side is, can I see if someone's in there and can I get them out? Can I reduce the impact on my systems and therefore on the actual impact of what they have and the consequences? So that reduces the risk. So now I've got And I have a whole bunch of capabilities that I can put on that side. So when you're looking at this, you have the left of Lindor stuff reduces the likelihood, right of Lindor stuff reduces the impact. Well, you got yourself a risk matrix, and you can actually line up the capabilities across that. Some cross both. Good, well-trained people help you on both sides of that.
Of course.
Right? So you have your sort of.
But this is the larger problem with OT is that there's not a whole lot of well-trained people. There are categories and pockets of well-trained people, which is wonderful.
Right.
But what about everybody else?
Well, that
breaks the matrix.
But no,
right?
what happens when you put that in there? Then you start looking at this of saying, it's not just if I train someone, it's the roles they have,
of course,
and what they need to do, and how do they impact on my system. And you start getting more of a maturity focus on this than a compliance. Yes, no.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
And you have like your assessment plan, and then you have your protecting the fan, and you have your protect and respond. You can actually line up that NIST stuff along here, and you can actually point out all the capabilities you have. There's not an infinite amount. There's like, depending on how you want to do it, 20 or so. And then you can actually see how well you're doing. The reason why this is important is now you're talking about it in risk. And now I can score you and see how well you do.
I mean, theoretically, you can score them on it, but that's assuming that all of the data that you're getting is coming from people who understand what the risk problem is. But we're talking about small and medium operators who don't even know what that means.
No.
So while I agree with you that that's a very important step, the first step has to be getting all the small business, all the medium business, all the big business in OT and ICS to understand what their requirements are and what those things even mean.
Right.
Like we have a huge hurdle that we have to get over.
But this is why I literally set this up with boards, is because they can get risk. They eat, sleep, and breathe. This is also why I go to insurance companies. I go, this is your risk calculation. Now, you have to get data behind it. I get that. And you have to build it correctly. I get that. But it starts with understanding and putting it in some context that you can freaking understand.
Right.
Oh, I can do one side, I can do the other side. So this is
okay. Yeah, I'm gonna, because the blue's my favorite. The blue Lindor for the listeners. The Lindor model that we just created is totally trademarked and patented. Left of Lindor. Stay left of Lindor.
So I mean, but back to your point, you got to get people to understand. You have to understand it in a context that makes business context. Don't talk about it in technical context. Let me tell you about how many CEVs, blah, blah. All of a sudden,
nobody cares. Especially in OT. They're like, okay, what does this do to production?
Right.
Let's talk about production.
What does it mean to my uptime? Right. And you have to understand that CIA models flipped in there. They want uptime. Okay, the confidentiality is,
and they're going to get dinged. If their uptime is not at the right level, the government's going to come in and say, "What are you doing?" Yeah. Hey, fine.
Oh, they're going to get dinged by more than government.
Well, yeah,
that's the market driver, right? It means real money, but we can attach it to that. This is about uptime. This is about availability. This is, you're talking about. You have to talk the language of operations. This is what often is missed as well. You come into from an IT angle. IT solution, IT perspective. And I'm telling you, this game is fundamentally changing. I actually think it's going to be flipped. Okay. As we go along here, that OT, they call it an IT OT convergence. That's crap. It's a hostile takeover, and OT's winning. Okay.
I do not disagree. I had a chat with someone from Siemens actually. And we were talking about ICS for ICS. You want to talk about how to respond to an incident to anyone in critical infrastructure, you talk about ICS, and they know that in and out. They've been living and breathing and dying by that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Now, why don't we just take this whole cyber thing that we keep trying to tell them about and put it in that format?
Sure.
So they can just get it, right?
Right. This is my whole point.
This is not difficult. We can do this.
But the Rose wasn't pinned on those people. Rose was pinned on the IT shop. Mm-hmm. Go solve this. IT shop says, okay, I'll go take my IT solution, because they heard the word cyber and they're like, okay, I got this one. I've been doing this a long time myself. Let's go have a patch Tuesday. And everyone in operations goes,
the fuck is patch Tuesday? Like, we got people to give water to.
And you're just like, there's maybe a patch once every 2 years.
If you can do the patch. If you look at the patch and you can actually implement it because your equipment.
People come up to me and say, I had this critical system. It runs on Windows XP. And what can I do about it? I'm like, I don't know. Pray? No, you have
Give
to.
up now?
No,
Rebuild
let's figure
the
it out.
plan.
Let's protect around it. And when can you update that? But you have to have those kind of conversations.
So actually, I'm going to stop you right there because this is a great, bigger question. That is a lot of what happens in OT is duct tape and duct tape.
Yeah,
and
more
duct
rubber
tape.
bands.
And
Yeah.
Absolutely, but guiding the hell out of our critical infrastructure. So at what point do we say we need to rebuild and we need to rebuild with security in mind?
So security by design, big deal, right? And when you're going into it, depending on which industry, some replenish and restock more than others, right? You have a turbine at a power plant, that's like 50 years. So I don't know, it'll be harder to do. Okay, but the switches inside and other types of things, there's other pieces of that that you can update more quickly. And you have to, but you can't, it's not a rip and replace. IT, you replace all this junk
There's
every 5
a reason,
years.
I love this example. There's a reason that Air Force One operated on DOS well into 2000s. And it's because you knew exactly what the vulnerabilities were going to be and how to protect against them. But that doesn't mean that it's super functional.
No, and this is a point. That's not an easy answer. It's because most of these systems were layered on proprietary system and then other systems. And then, like you said, Jerry, we can put in, and uptime's everything. So you have to be careful how you put the next parts in. Now you're connecting everything and trying to automate everything. So I tell my customers, I said,
maybe
look,
it should be like a step back, like 2 steps back. We're going to go backwards a little bit and we're going to cut out all of the stuff that we added that's really complicated. And we're going to start building.
you're going to have them have technology
building with security in mind. Right?
So I think you have to see how they're going forward with it. Back to our little Lindor model. If you get people understanding what they need to do, okay, and getting the fundamentals, like guys, we're talking blocking and tackling, okay, and it has to start from when you accept a piece of equipment when you first are starting to build your plant site, wherever you have to have the security by design thought of at that point.
Absolutely.
And when you accept something in, you have acceptance testing. They do it today all the time. Man, they turn it on, man, they click it, they go through it, put all things.
Well, you better have security.
But they don't do any zero. They do zero. Yeah. So what are we out there now doing? We're pushing for cyber security, cyber acceptance testing. Why? Because when you accept that piece of equipment, you're accepting all the risk from
all the risk
and every supplier before that. Yes. So the whole supply chain, you just accept it. You might want to check for something.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, some of those are part of the fundamentals. Think about it from the beginning. Know what you have to protect. Know where the holes are. Can you see somebody in your systems? Can you get them out? Just those 5 things we just said right there. If you just ask them at the board level for the OT environment, you make a huge change.
Oh, yeah.
Just those. Okay. And that's what we're talking about doing. We're talking about those basic hygiene, that basic way of.
And if I hear hygiene one more time today, and you guys know, my listeners, I'm the queen of hygiene, and everybody needs to know everything about cybersecurity because it's actually not that difficult. We should be teaching 5-year-olds about cybersecurity, but oh my God, hygiene. That word is difficult. Listen.
Cyber 9/11 hygiene.
Oh my God. By the Lindor model. But yeah, Ian, this has been an amazing chat. This is amazing. And you're going to come back on the show because we're going to geek out, I think, about several of these individual topics.
More Lindors.
As long as there's Lindor, right? All right. Thank you so much. This is a great episode. To my listeners, this is the latest episode of the National Blast, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the National Blast podcast with Keenan Skelly. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.